Have you ever wondered if your favorite brands have a hidden dark side? From tech giants to household names, you won't believe what lies beneath the shiny exteriors of companies like Apple and Nestlé, whose vile actions range from child labor to intentionally poisoning unsuspecting consumers all over the world. In this video, we'll reveal the chilling truth behind the 8 most evil businesses in the world. Tencent. In the vast world of business, Tencent is a big name, especially in China. But this giant isn't just limited to its home turf, it's everywhere, touching almost every aspect of our lives across the world. However, behind the cool apps and fancy tech lies a murkier story, one that involves snooping, data mining, and Tencent's close links to the Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP. So here's the thing. Tencent's rise to power largely revolves around its WeChat, an app that does everything. With over 1.4 billion users spending an average of 4 hours a day on it, WeChat puts a ton of services under one roof: socializing, payments, shopping, and entertainment. But here's the catch. Tencent gets to peek into nearly every corner of your life, from where you are to what's in your bank account. Sounds scary? Well, it gets worse. As Tencent spreads its wings globally, serious concerns continue to follow. It's less than scrupulous practices, and the biggest worry we have is consumer privacy and how closely Tencent works with the CCP. It's no secret that the Chinese government calls the shots in Chinese tech companies, often using them to gather data and do its bidding. And this complete and utter domination of the corporate world of China transforms Tencent into a powerful surveillance tool. In fact, some people even see Tencent as just an extension or weapon of the CCP. Take WeChat again, for example. It's at the heart of these worries. It's a one-stop shop for almost everything in China, but it's also a surveillance machine. Basically, the CCP uses Tencent's vast data treasure trove to keep a close eye on people. And by close, I mean that messages and images sent on WeChat are scanned for anything that might upset the government. So if you dare criticize the CCP, you could face message censorship, jail time, or worse. But if you think this is bad, wait till you hear about China's social credit system. This system is powered by Tencent's data, and it judges people's trustworthiness based on their payment history and online behavior. And this terrifying knowledge that your digital life is under constant surveillance often leads to self-censorship out of fear. Even deleted conversations aren't safe. And shockingly, the CCP can access deleted WeChat chats without permission or oversight, painting a dark picture of personal privacy in China. But Tencent isn't just about China. It's making massive moves abroad too, investing in companies like Reddit, Tesla, Spotify, Discord, and many others. To no one's surprise, this has raised concerns globally about Tencent's power to influence decisions and content in these companies due to its close ties to the Chinese government. But it's an undeniable fact that Tencent's aggressive investments and acquisitions have made it a major player in the West. To put it in perspective, Tencent's gaming division alone makes more money than gaming giants like Nintendo and Sony. For example, with ownership of Riot Games and stakes in major studios like Epic Games, Tencent holds a near monopoly on the gaming industry. This dominance raises alarms not only about competition, but also about the variety of content and creative freedom in the industry. And it's only recently has the Western world started to realize Tencent's influence and its potential to serve as a tool of the Chinese government. For example, Tencent's stake in Blizzard Entertainment led to the suspension of a gamer who supported the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong. Similarly, Tencent's partnership with the NBA resulted in the silencing of pro-democracy voices within the league, highlighting China's power to exert influence on international companies. So while it has undoubtedly played a pivotal role in China's technological evolution, Tencent remains a controversial figure in the global tech landscape because of its various acquisitions and unethical data mining practices. Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, often celebrated as the epitome of American entrepreneurship and innovation, has managed to build a global empire selling a simple beverage, cola. However, beneath the surface of bubbly advertisements and catchy slogans, a darker narrative exists that most people don't know. The story begins in the late 19th century, when the popularity of patent medicines was at its peak. In this era of unconventional medical remedies, Coca-Cola found its roots. What's surprising is that Coca-Cola's early history is intertwined with elements of addiction. Its creator, John Pemberton, turned to a cocaine-infused concoction while battling his own morphine addiction as a recovering Civil War veteran. This early version contained wine, cocaine, and caffeine-laden cola nuts, making it a potent drink that left consumers yearning for more. The original formula, known as French wine coca, eventually gave way to carbonated water due to alcohol prohibition, but the high sugar content remained, added primarily to mask the drink's bitter taste. And contrary to historical denials, documents revealed that early Coca-Cola indeed contained cocaine, which wasn't completely removed until 1929. As Coca-Cola shifted from a medicinal tonic to a beloved beverage, it became more than just a tasty drink. It became an actual addiction, because while cocaine was removed, the addictive qualities of of the sugary drink persisted. The intense sweetness and caffeine content in Coca-Cola kept consumers hooked, ensuring they returned for their regular fix of the good old sugar water. Unfortunately, no one realized how much the company has tightened its hold on its consumers until it was too late. In the 1990s, Coca-Cola sought to secure lifelong customers by targeting high school students. Sounds familiar? Well, that's because it is. Coca-Cola basically mirrored tactics employed by tobacco companies in the past. And what better way to do that than target young, malleable minds? So now the company signed pouring contracts with schools, offering premiums in exchange for exclusive vending rights. In other words, Coca-Cola's exclusive contracts essentially groomed young consumers for a lifetime of addiction, while schools reaped financial benefits, all the while depriving children of healthier options. And in some cases, Coca-Cola handed over huge bribes up front, like the eye-popping $90,000 given to a school in Syracuse, New York, to construct a stadium decorated with a massive Coca-Cola sign. But while this may not initially sound sinister, the darker side emerges in the fine print. Schools were not just encouraged, but effectively pressured to sell more Coca-Cola products, often at the expense of healthier options like milk or fruit juices. In some instances, healthier alternatives weren't even on the menu because Coca-Cola didn't approve them for sale in schools. Talk about sleazy corporate culture. So in short, by securing exclusive contracts with schools and colleges, Coca-Cola effectively groomed young people for a lifetime of addiction they'd have no chance of escaping. And despite a mounting body of evidence linking sugary drinks to health problems such as obesity and diabetes, Coca-Cola went on the offensive. The company aggressively lobbied against sugar taxes, dietary guidelines, and public awareness campaigns. They even backed questionable research designed to sow doubt about the scientific consensus on the dangers of sugary beverages. Fast forward 2 decades and the United States finds itself grappling with an obesity epidemic. And surprise, surprise, Coca-Cola admits its contribution to this harrowing issue. Of course, over the past decade, obesity has emerged as the biggest threat to Coca-Cola's profits because of the increasing awareness among people. So yeah, while the brand has become synonymous with happiness and togetherness, it's important to remember that the narrative it presents to the world isn't always as sparkling or sweet as the drink itself. Nestle, scandal, deceit, and cover-up. These are the ingredients in Nestlé's secret recipe for success. As the largest food company in the world, Nestlé's role in our global food landscape is undeniably important. But beneath its glossy facade lies a history tainted by exploitation, disregard for human rights, and environmental harm. Nestlé, like other chocolate manufacturers, sources cocoa beans from ethically questionable suppliers, especially in West Africa. Children, often forced into labor, spend their days wielding machetes, spraying pesticides, and carrying loads of up to 100 pounds for meager wages. In 2001, Nestlé, alongside Mars and Hershey, pledged to phase out the worst forms of child labor within 4 years. Yet this deadline has been repeatedly extended and remains unmet. No surprise there, really. They argue that it's impossible to determine the farms they source from. But investigative journalists have managed to uncover troubling truths on the ground. The Fair Labor Association even contradicts Nestlé's claims, stating that they could indeed trace their supply chains. But here's the thing, Nestlé's transgressions extend even beyond cocoa. Let's take a step back into its past to understand that. So in the 1970s, the company launched an insidious marketing campaign for their baby formula. Disguised as nurses, Nestlé representatives infiltrated hospitals in impoverished countries like Africa and South Asia, apparently trying to assist new mothers with breastfeeding difficulties. In reality, their goal was to promote Nestlé's baby formula while at the same time deriding the nutritional value of breast milk. Families were sent home with free samples, seemingly innocent but with dire consequences. Basically, in areas where water wasn't safe, using the formula led to malnutrition and diseases, resulting in an estimated 1 million infant deaths annually. Massive boycotts in the late 70s and early 80s finally forced Nestlé to abandon the fake nurse tactic. However, they attributed the issue to access to clean water, highlighting their bottled water offerings. How convenient. Nestlé's bottled water operations, the largest globally, came with a heavy environmental cost. In Pakistan, the company's sourcing of Pure Life bottled water caused water levels to plummet, leaving locals with unsafe and inadequate water sources. And closer to home, Nestlé's operations in drought-ridden California have raised eyebrows as well. For instance, the company has been sourcing water from the San Bernardino National Forest without a permit since 1988, paying just $524 a year to bypass regulations. Estimates also suggest they extract about 1 billion gallons annually. And during the Flint water crisis, Nestlé paid only $200 a year to pump hundreds of thousands of bottles worth from a nearby reserve. Oh, and let's not forget the most important thing here, hygiene. Nestlé's DuPont bottled water, despite widespread marketing claims, is often not recycled, basically contributing to environmental waste. So in the wake of these shocking revelations, it's clear that Nestlé's success that we used to praise so much has come at a huge human and environmental cost. DuPont. In the late 1930s, the DuPont company, a chemical giant with over a century of history, was at a crossroads. While it had managed to survive and thrive, it hadn't quite achieved the level of success it aspired to. That all changed in 1938 when a doctor stumbled upon a revolutionary material known as Teflon. But little did the world know that this discovery would lead to a legacy of toxic deception and corporate greed that would poison the world with willful negligence. So Teflon, the magical substance behind non-stick pans, was the game changer DuPont had been waiting for. It made cooking a breeze and people fell in love with its non-stick properties. But Teflon came with a dark secret. In 1951, DuPont started purchasing PFOA, or perfluorooctanoic acid, which the company refers to as C8 from 3M for use in the manufacturing of Teflon. Though PFOA was not classified by the government as a hazardous substance, 3M still sent DuPont recommendations on how to dispose of it. It was to be incinerated or sent to chemical waste facilities. In fact, DuPont's own instructions specified that it was not to be flushed into surface water or sewers. Producing C8 was a messy business, generating a significant amount of chemical waste. DuPont, rather than disposing of this waste responsibly, opted for a cheaper and more negligent approach, dumping it into nearby waterways. And over the decades that followed, the Ohio River became a dumping ground for hundreds of thousands of pounds of C8, leading to its contamination. By 1961, the same year they rolled out their Teflon-coated Happy Pan, DuPont knew for a fact that C8 was a toxic endocrine disruptor and caused cancer. DuPont's chief toxicologist, Dorothy Hood, cautioned executives in a memo that the substance was toxic and should be handled with extreme care. Did that make an impact? Nope, because DuPont still didn't stop the rollout. So while Teflon sales were soaring, DuPont knew the potential dangers of C8 and what it was doing. This chemical, also known as a forever chemical because it never breaks down, was toxic to humans and animals. But DuPont chose profits over safety by concealing the truth and allowing millions to use C8-laden products unknowingly. By 1982, DuPont had actually confirmed the high toxicity of C8 in humans. It was linked to numerous diseases, including cancer, and was silently wreaking havoc on public health. To sum it all up, from the 1960s well past the millennium, DuPont displayed gross criminal negligence in not reporting their in-house findings of C8 toxicity to the EPA. And for over 5 decades, DuPont chose to continue using toxic C8 despite its proven toxicity, exposing C8 to their own workers without telling them and disposing of C8 unsafely, releasing the toxin into the communities and the environment. But worst of all, they covered up and denied that they did when they were caught in the act. This is where their eventual downfall began. In the late 90s, Wilbur Tennant, a farmer from Parkersburg, West Virginia, began noticing alarming signs in his cattle. They were dying with blood oozing from their noses and mouths. Suspicion arose when he discovered that the source of his cattle's water was the same river contaminated by DuPont's C8. When Tennant took his concerns to local authorities, he was met with resistance and silence. No one wanted to go up against one of the big corporates, but Tennant refused to back down and he sought help from environmental lawyer Rob Bilott. Bilott, initially representing corporations like DuPont, decided to take on Tennant's case because it felt like his calling, and that decision changed everything. DuPont had met its match, as Bilott exposed the company's secret studies, proving the toxicity of C8 and its health effects. But the case of Wilbur Tennant and his dead cattle was just the tip of the iceberg. Thousands of Parkersburg residents started to come forward, revealing the extent of DuPont's deceit. A study of 70,000 people confirmed the link between C8 and various diseases, leaving DuPont with nowhere to hide. Finally, in 2019, 67 years after DuPont knew PFOA was toxic and did nothing, this forever chemical was banned globally under the Stockholm Convention. Unfortunately, by 2019, PFOA was already literally everywhere on the planet in concentrations considered unsafe. In 2020, NBC News revealed that DuPont was still avoiding its responsibility to clean up its C8 mess and compensate those harmed by DuPont's negligence. Sadly, despite the lawsuits, fines, and public outrage, DuPont managed to retain its profitability. It outsmarted regulators by creating less toxic variations of C8 like Gen X and spinning them off into companies like Chemours, and this allowed them to escape the shackles of lawsuits and continue their toxic legacy even to this day. Facebook. You might not be aware of it, but Facebook, the one app we have all used at some point, stands accused of enabling one of the biggest betrayals of user trust in history. The Cambridge Analytica scandal exposed Facebook's lax approach to safeguarding user data and its apparent disregard for the potential consequences. The social media giant, which boasts billions of users worldwide, was complicit in a massive breach of trust, one that involves stolen data, political manipulation, and psychological profiling on an unprecedented scale. So the dark story begins with a company known as Cambridge Analytica, a political data analytics firm that was able to obtain data from over 87 million Facebook users, all without their knowledge or consent. Founded with funding from conservative megadonors Rebecca and Robert Mercer and aided by then Vice President Steve Bannon, Cambridge Analytica played an important role in the 2016 US presidential election, aligning itself with the Trump campaign. Now, the method by which Cambridge Analytica harvested this huge trove of data was via Alexander Kogan, a Russian-American researcher at the University of Cambridge. Kogan created an external app called Thesis Your Digital Life, disguised as a personality quiz, which lured approximately 270,000 individuals into taking it. What they didn't realize was that this seemingly innocent quiz was extracting data not only from them but also from their friends' profiles, and this secret operation culminated in an enormous cache of user data, a goldmine for political campaigns. So you might be wondering, what kind of information did Cambridge Analytica collect? The answer is both extensive and deeply troubling. Users' personal details, their location, and their page preferences were all mined to create psychological profiles, offering insights into their character and personality traits. And to put that into perspective, these creepily detailed profiles became invaluable tools for creating targeted political campaigns. As whistleblower Christopher Wiley, a former Cambridge Analytica employee, revealed in 2018, we exploited Facebook to harvest millions of people's profiles and built models to exploit what we knew about them and target their inner demons. The implications of such manipulation were profound, to say the very least, as political operatives used this information to influence individuals' beliefs and voting behavior. But here's the kicker. One of the most damning aspects of this scandal is Facebook's apparent complicity. While the social media giant claims to have removed Cambridge Analytica's quiz app from its platform in 2015, the truth paints a more troubling picture. Facebook's actions, or rather the lack thereof, have come under scrutiny. It has been revealed that as early as September 2015, Facebook employees were discussing Cambridge Analytica long before the scandal even emerged publicly. What's even more awful is that despite knowing about the data breach, Facebook failed to take adequate measures. Wiley claimed that Facebook did not demand the deletion of the data until August 2016, a mere checkbox on a form, leaving ample time for misuse. The raw data stolen by Cambridge Analytica was readily available online when the story broke in 2018, showing Facebook's lack of diligence. Furthermore, Alexander Nix, CEO of Cambridge Analytica, vehemently denied working with Kogan or using Facebook data despite evidence to the contrary, and Facebook itself has denied providing data to Cambridge Analytica, asserting that users knowingly provided their information. However, the fine line between academic research and commercial exploitation was blurred, raising questions about the use of this data for non-academic purposes. Anyway, in response to the scandal and to save its own neck, Facebook has suspended Cambridge Analytica, its parent company Strategic Communication Laboratories, and Wiley from its platform. Then in 2019, Facebook faced the consequences of its actions in the form of a historic $5 billion fine imposed by the Federal Trade Commission, FTC. And so, Facebook's fall from grace should really serve as a cautionary tale for all companies entrusted with the personal data of their users. Tesla. When we think of Tesla, images of sleek electric cars and groundbreaking technology often come to mind. However, behind the thin veneer of innovation and sustainability lies a deeply troubling reality. Tesla's reliance on cobalt, a key component in its lithium-ion batteries, obtained through a partnership with Glencore plc. And this association has unveiled a sinister side to Tesla's operations, one that involves exploiting the desperate conditions of cobalt mining in the Democratic Republic of Congo, or the DRC. Let me break it down. Tesla's journey into the cobalt mining world begins with its collaboration with Glencore. Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory has already been using cobalt sourced from this Anglo-Swiss mining giant, and plans are in motion to extend this partnership to Tesla's new Berlin Gigafactory. This supply, however, is not without its dark side, and it raises questions about Tesla's bold claims of ethical sourcing and human rights. The cobalt sourced by Glencore for Tesla's batteries hails from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a nation plagued by a long history of conflict, corruption, and human rights abuses. Glencore has been operating a copper mine in the Katanga region of the DRC since since 2008, with cobalt emerging as a profitable byproduct. Shockingly, the DRC accounts for a staggering 60% of the world's cobalt supply, making it a global cobalt hub. The extraction process, however, raises grave concerns. Reports have revealed rampant illegal mining, human rights abuses, and corruption in the cobalt mining industry of the DRC. And what's particularly concerning is the alleged reliance on child labor in this industry. Human rights organizations have expressed serious reservations about the conditions under which cobalt is extracted and the use of child workers, which is obviously a violation of international labor standards. A medical study published in The Lancet explains the appalling human cost of cobalt mining in the DRC. Workers in the African Copper Belt, a mining region that stretches across Zambia and the DRC, face significantly higher risks of having children born with severe birth defects. These include limb abnormalities, cleft palates, and neural tube defects like spina bifida, all attributed to the high levels of toxic pollution resulting from cobalt extraction in southern Katanga. In fact, this region has earned the awful distinction of being among the world's top 10 most polluted areas. And every day, tens of thousands of miners labor under harsh conditions, exposed to hazardous pollutants and dust. Shockingly, many of them lack even the most basic protective gear, such as gloves and face masks. Mark Dummett, head of business, security, and human rights at Amnesty International, vividly describes the dire circumstances. In one village we visited, people showed us how the water in the local stream that they drank, that they said was contaminated by the discharge of waste from a mineral processing plant. This brings us back to Elon Musk's company. Tesla is not a passive player in this story of human rights violation. It's currently facing legal action, alongside other tech giants like Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Dell, for the injuries and deaths of child miners in the DRC. This lawsuit, filed by international rights advocates on behalf of 14 Congolese families, alleges that these companies, including Tesla, had specific knowledge of the link between cobalt in their products and child labor. They argue that these tech giants failed to regulate their supply chains, ultimately profiting from exploitation and contributing to the suffering of children working in the Congo mines. So it's quite disheartening to think that the cobalt mines of the DRC, where Glencore operates to supply for Tesla, are filled with such dangers. And the reports of child labor and toxic pollution in these mines have definitely cast a dark shadow on Tesla's mission for a sustainable future, no matter how many excuses it continues to make. Shell. Imagine a scenario where one business, one colossal corporation, not only poisons a nation's water supply with cancer-causing substances, but also seizes control of that nation's government, military, and destiny. This nightmarish tale isn't from a dystopian novel, but a stark reality unfolding in Nigeria. And at the heart of it lies Shell, a corporation owned by some of the world's wealthiest royal families. Shell's actions in Nigeria provide a blueprint for corporations to colonize entire countries while staying hidden under a shroud of international propaganda. Let's take it from the start. Shell's track record places it among the most reviled businesses on the planet. Between 2011 and 2015, Shell attracted more attention from activists than any other multinational corporation, according to Sigwatch, an international observatory monitoring the activities of NGOs. The allegations against Shell span from environmental catastrophes to grave human rights violations, particularly in Africa, where the company has faced relentless boycott campaigns. It's important to understand why Shell has a position on the list of the world's most despised multinationals. Basically, it can be attributed to its consistent pattern of recidivism and an insufficient commitment to eco-sustainability. The Brent Spar incident, for instance, culminated in Shell's decision to sink the platform. In 2004, the company faced another scandal for falsifying data on oil reserves and deposits, leading to fines of $17 million to the Financial Services Authority and $450 million to US shareholders. And then in 2015, Shell set an infamous record by paying the largest ever compensation for environmental damage in history. The Anglo-Dutch behemoth shelled out approximately £55 million to compensate the residents of Nigeria's Bodo region for the ecological devastation caused by oil pipeline spills in 2008. This catastrophe occurred in the Niger Delta, where Shell has been operating since the 1990s in partnership with the Nigerian government. Throughout its presence in Nigeria, Shell has repeatedly encountered fierce protests from local communities and the international community. While this may be one of the most glaring incidents, it is not the only instance of Shell's involvement in environmental pollution. It gets even worse. Shell's history is completely ruined by environmental disasters. The infamous Brent Spar, a floating storage platform in the North Sea, faced criticism for its maintenance and was eventually dismantled in 1995. Sakhalin II, an extraction platform in collaboration with Gazprom, continues to operate in the Okhotsk Sea since 1999, despite initial opposition from the Russian government. The Kolik platform's grounding in Alaska in 2013 risked triggering an environmental catastrophe. These incidents underscore Shell's disregard for the environmental impact of its operations. And to make matters worse, Shell's influence extends beyond environmental concerns. The company has been caught up in national and international policy matters in the regions where it operates. A prime example revolves around Shell's operations in Nigeria. Since the 1990s, Shell and the former Nigerian military regime have faced opposition from the Ogoni People's Survival Movement, led by political activist Ken Saro-Wiwa. Peaceful protests were often violently suppressed by Nigerian police, culminating in the public execution of Saro-Wiwa and 8 other activists in 1995. Because of this, Shell faced allegations of human rights violations and eventually settled in 2009 by paying a $15.5 million fine. However, this admission of guilt did not rectify the underlying issues. In 2011, Shell, along with Italy's Eni, purchased the license Opal 245, exploiting a significant oil field off Nigeria for $1.3 billion. A 2012 Financial Times investigation revealed that only a fraction of the money reached the state coffers, while the rest fueled corruption. Today, Nigeria faces civil unrest and violence, with militant groups sabotaging oil pipelines and engaging in kidnappings, all thanks to one company. The Nigerian government has declared an oil war against impoverished and poisoned citizens, all while the international community remains largely oblivious to the true extent of Shell's control. And sadly, Shell's dominance in Nigeria goes to show how a corporation can subjugate an entire nation through a terrible combination of financial manipulation, propaganda, and brutal suppression of dissent. Apple. In our Apple-obsessed world, here's a question we often skip. What's happening behind the shiny screens we adore? While Apple flaunts its image of innovation and progress, let's uncover some not-so-comfy truths they'd prefer to keep under wraps. So we all know that Apple, with its cutting-edge technology and progressive branding, has always projected an image of a socially conscious and forward-thinking corporation. However, for those working in its factories, or more accurately sweatshops, the reality is a far cry from this sweet facade. While Apple continues to rake in enormous profits, the harsh realities of its manufacturing practices are a haunting reminder of the way corporations are built on the backs of their workforce. Much of the production of Apple's iPhones takes place at Foxconn, the world's largest maker of electronic components based in China. It's a relationship that has come under scrutiny for its labor practices and the harsh conditions endured by workers. Workers endure excessive overtime for meager wages while facing inhumane treatment by management. So Apple's reputation as a progressive and socially responsible company seems to be only skin deep. Let me explain. A student named Dejian Zheng, who worked undercover in a Shanghai iPhone factory, lifted the veil on the appalling conditions. His grueling 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, earned him a monthly salary of just $450. But it's not just the hours that are problematic. Zheng also exposed the overcrowded and cramped living conditions, where 8 people often share a bedroom and more than 200 share a bathroom. The most shocking revelation was the presence of nets in stairways and barred windows, which were intended to prevent worker suicides. So I want you to just picture in your head the conditions under which Apple's iconic devices are born, the devices we use in our everyday lives. Now, one of the most disturbing aspects of Apple's manufacturing process is the alleged use of child labor. Yep, you heard that right. In an article by the New York Times, an undercover investigator, Mike Daisy, posed as a wealthy businessman to infiltrate factories where Apple products and other electronics are made. He says he witnessed inhumane conditions and interviewed workers outside of factories who said they were as young as 12. Many of them were just 13 or 14-year-olds who were there to make a living for themselves at such a tender age. Of course, the presence of such young workers in Apple's supply chain raises alarming questions about the company's knowledge and complicity. Can Apple truly claim ignorance of these practices within its own factories? I don't think so. And sadly, allegations of worker mistreatment at Foxconn have persisted for over a decade. Workers describe grueling working days, a lack of meaningful employment relationships, and abusive labor practices. In 2006, Apple conducted an audit that found Foxconn compliant in the majority of areas, though it did confirm some allegations. Yet this compliance did not translate into an improved working environment. But hold on, because this is where it gets even darker. In 2010, The Guardian reported a series of suicides at a Foxconn plant in Shenzhen, China, where iPhones were being manufactured. Workers in the sweatshops were committing suicide with alarming regularity because of the dismal workplace conditions. In fact, Debbie Chan, who is a project manager for Students and Scholars Against Corporate Misbehavior, reported that at least 18 Foxconn workers took their own lives in 2010 while they were working on Apple products in the sweatshops. And in contrast to this employee misery, in Shenzhen and Chengdu, a joint Foxconn workforce of 500,000 is providing the labor that, in the first quarter of 2011, contributed to Apple Inc.'s net profit of $6 billion. So in the end, Apple's massive profits come at a steep human cost, a cost that they always refuse to admit. So which company do you think has the darkest side? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And you want to see more content like this? Click on one of the cards on your screen and I'll catch you there.